At Shinru Academy, the scene begins with some girls discussing their school in the girls' dormitory. One of the girls says the school is built on top of an old graveyard, which another girl confirms. She tells them about a ghost sighting at the cemetery next to the male dorm. The third girl, who's sitting on the ground and shivering, screams no repeatedly because she's so scared. Someone knocks on their door, startling the three girls. The door opens and Riku-Rei tells them softly that it's almost time for lights out. The girls call her name admiringly as she instructs them to clean up and get to bed. They reply okay. Riku-Rei closes the door and some girls jogging through the hallway with pillows greet her goodnight. She smiles back at them. Riku-Rei gazes at the moon through her window. She thinks about how nothing has changed with the dorm residents and how quiet the night is. She also thinks about what no one knows, the person who fights to protect their peaceful days. She looks outside where a ghost-like boy and cat appear. The boy says hey and waves before they both vanish. She continues thinking about the boy being in a completely closed-off world where no one's voice can reach him. The midnight alarm bell rings. The moon turns red and begins to look like a skull. A beam of light shoots into the sky and expands. The ground splits open and a pyramid-like structure called a mausoleum emerges. The symbol on top of the mausoleum glows and a treasure appears above it. Dark, shadowy beings with red eyes appear in huge numbers. They move toward the mausoleum to steal the treasure in the tomb. A cat named Wanchoi hisses at the enemies. A boy named Riku Suigen calls Wanchoi over, and it climbs onto his shoulder, playfully tickling him. Riku Suigen looks out and notices the enemies, commenting that they're relentless day after day. The enemy in front orders them all to kill Riku Suigen. The dark, shadowy beings rush toward the mausoleum to attack him. Riku Suigen gets serious and runs toward the enemies advancing on him. He activates his power, making differently colored balls swirl around him. He begins taking out the enemies, whom he calls undead, with two flaming swords. The undead shoot arrows at him, which he avoids while continuing to attack them, thinking about how the battle over the mausoleum started and how it would someday end. 1 year ago, in the summer, at the Shinru Academy outdoor pool, Riku Suigen sits somewhere to play his video game. The game gets switched off by three guys who are pestering him and asking if he has seen a pink-haired girl. Riku Suigen replies that he hasn't seen anything. One of the guys begins to talk about Riku Suigen being the poor student who keeps working part-time jobs everyone is talking about. He tells Riku Suigen to do his job better and be more observant as the lifeguard. Riku Suigen tells them that he can't swim and that he cleans the pool. One of the guys walks to the edge of the pool where Riku Suigen's cat, Wanchoi, is and picks it up. He turns to Riku Suigen and tells him that he will just help him clean the pool as he throws Wanchoi into it. Riku Suigen hurriedly jumps into the pool to go save Wanchai. He couldn't swim and ended up sinking as he lost consciousness. Riku Suigen wakes up to see Wanchoi, who happily jumps on him to lick him and play with him. A boy standing close to the pool named Rancho asks if Suigen's awake. While Suigen looks at him surprised, Suigen asks if he saved him. Rancho replies that Suigen had already been pulled out by the time he arrived by Riku-Rei. Suigen, who's scrubbing the pool, thinks about who Riku-Rei is. Rancho tells him that Riku-Rei is the sole daughter of Riku Yuki, the vice president of Godgrave Tech Company. He continues to talk about how she got suitors lined up and the amount of presents she received on her birthday. He says that Riku-Rei is the smartest girl in school as he cuddles a flustered girl in his arms. He asks Suigen if he does not know her, and Suigen nods to answer Rancho's question. Suigen, who's still scrubbing the pool, remembers how Riku-Rei kissed him when he was underwater. He gets flustered and hurriedly continues his cleaning job. At the fight scene, Suigen continues to take out the undead with Wanchoi sitting on his shoulder. He looks at a giant undead appearing. He gets warned by Wanchoi, who screams to make him look forward. He sees more giant undead trying to hit him up ahead. He avoids the hits and looks around to discover that he is surrounded. He hits the ground to activate a spell named Thousand Graves. Large cross-shaped structures with glowing symbols on them begin to come out from the earth. It takes out the giant undead and some of the normal ones. Suigen puts Wanchoi down on top of one of the crosses. He looks down at the enemies from the top and says to the worried Wanchoi that he won't lose. The enemies continue to move towards the cross he's standing on, and Suigen reaffirms that he won't lose. He continues to think about fighting to protect the world and someone more important to him. He and Wanchoi jump down to continue fighting. Suigen thinks about the day he'll see the person again. Riku-Rei narrates what she saw when she woke from her deep slumber as a child. She's lying on red leaves under a large tree. She describes how the first thing she saw was a boy with an uneasy expression staring down at her. The young Riku-Rei tries to stand up, and the little Suigen asks if she's okay. She asks Suigen who he is, and he immediately introduces himself. Suigen then asks for her name, which she attempts to say. At the cemetery next to Shinru Academy, a girl and boy drink together under the moonlight. The boy pretends to be clueless as the girl makes advances toward him. They both notice a shadow-like figure looking at them and saying hello. The two scream and run away. Suigen looks at them and complains about the mess they left behind. He cleans up the trash and thinks about his job as a security guard. He mentions the job's advantages as he sits at his outdoor computer setup. He puts on his headset and turns on his computer to play a game called Dungeon Century. In the game, Suigen's character character takes on a level 99 ultimate dragon. He defeats it in seconds, surprising the other characters nearby. The people express shock as an old man's character appears to explain that Suigen's character is a mysterious lone wolf who never speaks but defeats enemies with the lowest grade equipment. The old man adds that Suigen's character goes wherever needed and asks for nothing in return. His character name is Gwyn, and he's at level 180. Outside the game, Suigen smirks and gets embarrassed by what the other gamers said. He notices he's leveled up as he checks his character's stats. He considers which dungeon to visit next, but suddenly hears a girl asking for help. In the game, a girl is running from a giant octopus-like monster. She turns to attack it with water magic, but it has no effect, and she continues getting chased. Suigen watches and checks the stats of the monster called Kickbacker. He enters the scene with Gwyn and quickly defeats the Kickbacker with ice and physical attacks. The girl's character runs to Gwyn and thanks him for saving her. She introduces herself as Ray. The monitor shuts off as she tries to ask his name. He yells and tries to restart the computer, but eventually gives up. He looks at the streetlight his computer is connected to. He tells the worried Wanchoi he'll be fine as he climbs the light pole to fix the connection. Riku Ray opens her window with a smile, telling her roommate about the amazing person she just met in her game. She notices a boy staring at her from a nearby light pole. They stare at each other briefly until a pillow knocks Suigen off the pole. He falls badly as Riku Ray's roommate angrily appears at the window, calling him a peeping Tom and other names. The next day, at the high school building, Suigen cleans the glass of the building from the outside. He complains about being treated as a peeping Tom as he still feels pain from the injuries he got from his fall. He hears Riku Ray's voice and looks at where she is. He sees her with a laptop playing the girl character he saved the night before. She and her roommate discuss the game. Riku Ray tells her roommate that the game was made by her father, and she continues to say that she feels like she belongs in the game more than reality. They both continue to discuss it. Rancho looks at them from a window close to where Suigen is working. He says some wise words relating to falling in love that Suigen doesn't understand. Rancho says that the boys at the academy consider Riku Ray an idol. Suigen looks back at the girls to see them surrounded by boys who come to ask Riku Ray out. Riku Ray's roommate tells them that they are annoying. She holds Riku Ray's hand, and they run away from the boys. Suigen tries to ask Rancho if that is the girl he was telling him about, only to discover that Rancho isn't there anymore. In the evening at the boys' dormitory, Suigen checks out his character stats as he thinks about how he enjoys the fact that he keeps getting stronger in the game. He receives a friend request and a video message from Riku Ray's character immediately pops up. The message shocks him and it makes him start to cough. She thanks him for saving her when she was in danger and asks him to be her friend. The surprised Suigen sits on his chair as his brain enters overdrive mode. Suigen rides a bicycle to deliver some packages. He thinks about the time he and Riku Ray have been together over the months to be like a dream. He looks at her character in his room as he thinks about how he always thought all he needed was to be in the game and be with her until she says that she wonders what he's like outside the game. She tells him that she would love to meet the real him someday. Suigen, who's riding his bike, stops and laughs before thinking to himself that they can never meet because of his poor situation in real life and how they both live in completely different social statuses. Suigen thinks about his only wish, which is to continue to stay with her in the game. He tries to log in but receives an important announcement that the game will be discontinued. He gets shocked and screams out. The next morning at school, the devastated Suigen struggles to walk. He thinks about the ending of the game and walks past some students who do not care about him. He looks into the sky still lying on the bush and thinks about his adventures with Ray. Riku Ray's father gives her a package and she asks what it is. He tells her that he wants her to hold on to it. He also tells her to follow the instructions in it if something happens. She asks her father what he means and what's going to happen. He replies that she shouldn't worry and that it's just a precaution, and says that the game, Dungeon Century, has finished its role as a prototype and that the new game is about to start. He tells her about what the new game will be like and how she found a new partner in the just concluded one. Riku Ray gets flustered and asks if he's monitoring her. He gives his reason and apologizes for it when she starts to complain. Suigen kneels in front of a water pool in the school, still looking devastated. He looks into the water and thinks about Riku Ray's character in the game. The students around wonder what he's doing as none of them try to approach him. Ranshu, who's also watching, walks up to Suigen with a girl who tries to stop him. He talks about the game and Suigen replies to him that the world has ended. The girl listening to their conversation wonders what they are saying. Rancho tries to tell him that even if the game is discontinued, all he has to do is meet her in real life. Suigen replies that she only knows him in the game, and the girl with Rancho asks if it's a one-sided love thing with someone he never met. Suigen stands still looking depressed and says that they live in two completely different worlds. He walks away from the scene staggering and the girl asks Rancho if he would be alright. Rancho says some cool words which makes the girl flustered and say that he's wonderful. Suigen thinks of work and Ray as he continues to stagger by the roadside. A car carrying Riku Ray's father passes by him and after a while, he falls to the ground. The person driving Riku Ray's father tells him about his schedule for the day. At nighttime, Riku Ray's roommate tries to tell her that staying up all night is not good for her health. Riku Ray, who's working on her computer, thanks her and says that she'll be fine. The roommate goes to sleep. and Riku Rei greets her goodnight before continuing her work on the computer. Characters in the game world sit together in a tavern and discuss the discontinuation of the game. Some complain about how much they spent in the game, while Rei, who's also sitting alone, faces her drink. They start to talk about an item that grants any wish in the world they are in, and make jokes about using it to stop them from discontinuing the game, as they all laugh about it. They walk out of the tavern to continue the game and enjoy it before it gets discontinued. Rei sits alone in the tavern with the bartender and wonders if Gwyn will show up soon. Suigen rushes to set up his computer at the site where he uses free electricity. He starts the game and goes to meet Rei, who smiles at him. She tells him that he's late and asks if he is busy. She holds his hand and tells him to go with her. They run together and stop after a while as she tells him about the game ending in a week. She leaves his hand and tells him that they should enjoy the adventures until then. She continues to run while Suigen thinks about a lot of things, like a devastated person who has now accepted his fate. They both sit under a large leaf plant that's shading them from the rain. Rei turns some flowers into potions and tells Gwyn that there is something she wishes to find before the game ends. She gives him 2 of the 3 she just made and continues to talk about her wish. Gwyn, who doesn't talk, takes the portions from her and accepts to help her achieve this wish. He extends his hand to shake her, and she happily jumps on him to hug him. They fall to the ground, which shakes the leaf plant shading them, and all the water collected on it pours on them. She begins to laugh as she lies on top of him. Suigen, who's also enjoying the game, thinks about how he can be with her as the water splashes around. Later that night at the Godgrave Tech Company, GGTC, they began an announcement of a new online game named Gravebuster, which they call the ultimate online game. The announcers continue to describe the game to the masses. They end the announcement with the theme of the game, which is reality that surpasses reality. One of the top officials in GGTC says that it is thanks to the genius game designer, Riku Yuuki, that they can finally announce the game. Riku Rei's father, named Riku Yuki, replies that it is just the beginning of everything, while the announcers continue to say the name and theme of the game. At the boys' dormitory, Suigen lies face flat on his bed and begins to think about Rei's voice telling him to come over. He starts to laugh while Wanchoi sleeps in its cat bed. On the day of its release, Dungeon Century was set to be discontinued. Suigen thinks about the game shutting down while washing dishes in the kitchen. Later, he sits outside contemplating how at midnight he'll lose his only connection to Riku Rei, while his pet Wanchoi eats from its dish. At night in the game, players hold a festival celebrating the game's finale. Rei watches briefly before running away, visibly upset. Riku Yuta observes everything from his office as in-game announcers inform players about the upcoming new game. He receives a video call from a woman asking if he's heading home. He replies that he wants to watch until the end. She mentions the game must be important to him, but he laughs it off, telling her not to worry about an old man and to go home. After she politely ends the call, Riku Yuta reflects on his goal to find someone, wondering if it still matters and if he still believes in people, as a flower appears on his monitor. Suigen races on his bicycle to set up his computer. His bike malfunctions, causing glass containers from his logistics job to shatter on the ground as he falls into bushes. Meanwhile, in the game, Rei, who's been waiting at their usual tavern, stands up and asks the bartender for a favor. At Godgrave Tech Company, security personnel are unconscious as a woman infiltrates the building. Rei admires a field of glowing flowers she's never seen before. At GGTC, the infiltrator points a gun at Riku Yuki, telling him not to resist. When he questions her actions, she says it pains her to dispose of a coworker. Riku Yuki asks if this is Ling's scenario, calling it third rate. In the game, Rei picks glowing flowers while chaos erupts in the city. A boss character kills game characters, demanding more. Suigen runs frantically toward his setup, repeatedly cursing. City inhabitants flee through the flower field, while Rei watches in confusion. She notices the enemy draining life force from captured people with energy threads, absorbing their equipment and dropping their lifeless bodies that disperse into light. Tearfully grabbing her weapon, Rei demands to know how it could do something so horrible. In Riku Yuuki's office, the woman asks at gunpoint if he'll reveal how to open a tomb. He asks if she truly believes he would help grave robbers. Calling him the final gravekeeper, she thanks him for his service before shooting him in the head. Suigen, who has been running for a while, stood to catch his breath as he gasped for air. He continues to run toward his destination, which is close to the girls' dormitory. Rei dodges the energy threads of the monster. She screams that it is the last day of the game they all love so much as shoots some of her magic abilities at the monster. The monster easily blocks the attacks as a large tentacle comes out of the ground and disrupts Rei's stance. The monster says that it wants all the items. Its lower body, Gwyn arrives in the game to see firecrackers in the sky and chaos everywhere on land. The master of the bar, who's under some of the collapsed building's materials, calls to Gwyn and tells him that he has a message from Rei. The master of the bar plays the voice recording of Rei to him. She says that he seems busy, so she went ahead of him and hoped that he would come soon. Gwyn hurriedly runs through the chaos-affected area to where Rei is while the firecrackers continue to blow out in the sky. Rei opens her eyes and sees Gwyn holding her in his arms. She tells him that she knew he would come and continues to say that he has saved her many times. She tells him that she wants to thank him as she holds out a dying flower in her hand. Gwyn holds her hand while Rei says that she couldn't find the evening song flower and she apologizes to him. Tears stream out of Gwyn's helmet eye hole. She thanks him for everything and says that it was fun. One of Gwyn's teardrops falls on the dying flower in Rei's hand. The flower starts to bloom and glow brightly. Rei, who is still in Gwyn's arms, asks if it is the evening song flower. She tries to say that it is pretty, but she gets dragged by the monster, along with Gwyn, who is holding on to her. Rei leaves the flower in his hand as he loses his hold of her and falls back to the ground. Rei continues to get pulled by the monster's thread until she gets stabbed in the abdomen by 3 other tentacles of the monster. Tears drop from Gwyn's eyes as he falls into an endless void with the flower in his hand. Suigen sees the thank you for playing the Dungeon Century interface of the game on his computer at exactly midnight. His mouse drops from his hand as an announcement of the game finally being discontinued enters. The announcer thanks the players for their support while Suigen looks down feeling devastated. Wanchoi chases some birds away as Suigen goes back with his bicycle on a misty night. Wanchoi, who's ahead, runs further and stops making sounds. Suigen calls for it but soon sees it in Riku-Rei's hand, who's standing under a tree. Suigen says hi and walks past her with his bicycle. Riku-Rei says that he was with her all this time, which makes him stop walking forward. She asks that he allow her to thank him for always helping her out. Suigen replies that he doesn't deserve such. He says that he wasn't able to do anything at the most crucial time and that he couldn't protect her, as his eyes got teary. Riku-Rei puts Wanchoi on Suigen's shoulder and asks if he'll save her next time in the new game. The bicycle falls from his hands and he begins to panic about what he's going to do about the spoiled bicycle and how he's going to work. Riku-Rei starts to laugh as Suigen moves around panicking and saying things. Police vehicles surround the Godgrave Tech Company. An officer informs the higher-ups on the intercom that they have set up barricades around the building and the surrounding area. The officer continues to say that they are currently continuing with their investigation to take pictures of the murder scene. Suigen runs very fast past 2 girls who scream because his wind pressure also pushes up their skirts. The flustered girls look at him and wonder what is wrong with him. Suigen thinks about what Rancho told him about Riku-Rei's father as he continues to run towards the girls' dormitory. Suigen sits outside at the entrance of the dorm. He thinks about what her roommate told him when he reached there and how Riku-Rei won't be coming back to the dorm for a while. At Rikuyuki's funeral venue, the men in suits set up the venue while some people talk about how Rikuyuki was his daughter's only relative and the huge debts he had from various places. Riku-Rei sits in front of the hall alone, crying silently and shivering with her father's picture in her hands. Suigen watches the news about the death and funeral of Rikuyuki. A member of the Godgrave Tech Company says some words about the deceased and declares that the company will work with law enforcement to bring the culprit to justice. The woman who killed Rikuyuki watches from a hidden location in the hall as the man says that they will make the culprit pay for the crime. Suigen, who's watching the funeral program on television, sees the face of the deceased and immediately remembers the man holding his hand when he was much younger. He says to himself that he knows the man. The next day at school, Riku-Rei apologizes to Suigen for asking him to come when he is busy with work. Suigen replies that it's not a problem, and he tells her that he is very sorry. She replies to him that she is fine now and moves on to the important topic. She opens the package her father gave to her before and tells Suigen that she wants him to have it. She hands it over to Suigen and he picks up the paper on it that has his name. He reads the content of the letter and then proceeds to open the package. He sees a device in it and Riku-Rei calls it a Seibei. She tells him that it is a console her father created specifically to play the new game. Suigen asks why her father wanted him to have it. He places some of his fingers on it and the console begins the user identification sequence. The device scans him entirely down to his fingerprint and genes to complete the user identification. The device starts up the system while he asks the clueless Riku-Rei what is going on, which she replies that she doesn't know. A van enters the school compound as Suigen asks her why her father would give him such a thing and she replies that she doesn't know. Riku-Rei begins to tell him that she is not her father's biological daughter and that she doesn't remember much. She apologizes for telling him something so strange, which he replies that it isn't. A woman calls Riku-Rei outside the room and opens the door to tell her that she has guests outside. Riku-Rei immediately stands and tells the woman that she'll go see them. She looks at Suigen and tells him that she'll be right back. Suigen looks at the device with a sad face while the woman shows Riku-Rei the location of her guests outside. 2 men ask her if she's Rikuyuki's daughter and they smirk. Suigen notices the device starting up and a feminine voice welcomes him to Gravebusters. They show him the status of his wealth, which begins to count up and stops at 10 billion yen. He gets surprised and asks if it's some kind of mistake. A recorded audio begins to play, which makes him fret, and the device falls from his hand. Rikuyuki introduces himself in the recording. He says that he's the man who raised Riku-Rei, and he is also his grandfather, whom he certainly can't remember. The man who gave the speech at the funeral on behalf of GGTC enters a VIP-only room. He receives a report about the countermeasures from the woman who killed Rikuyuki, and tells him that Rikuyuki ended up dying before telling her how to open up the tomb. He tells her that they just need to sort through his estate, but another VIP official interrupts their conversation by telling them that there's no need to worry about it, as he gives the reasons for saying them. The VIP official turns to the other officials in a hall and declares that it is the will of their master, Dark Tiger, who's sitting on a throne throne with full body armor. Suigen listens to recorded audio where Rikuyuki explains the reason he left the inheritance with him. The first reason makes Suigen enter a dialogue with himself as he thinks of how life married to Riku-Rei will be. The recording stops his delusion and tells him about how Riku-Rei's parents were eliminated for the same cause. Rikuyuki continues to say that he took her in and raised her while protecting her from the enemy. He thinks about the words he just heard from the recording, only to hear Riku-Rei's voice outside. The two men try to force her into their van, but she screams that they let her go. She tells them that her father wouldn't have left that much debt, but the men insist that they would hear her out at their office. The badge on her uniform falls off and Suigen comes out from the dorm telling them to stop. He screams at them and tells them not to touch her. Suigen charges to attack without heeding Riku-Rei's words, but gets kicked back by one of the men. The man walks to where Suigen falls and continues to kick, and also step on him while the words of Rikuyuki continue to run in his head. Riku-Rei begs the other man with teary eyes to tell his friend to stop and that she'll go wherever they want her to. The man smiles and tells the other man beating down Suigen that they should leave. The man turns to leave after making his comment, but Suigen holds on to his leg. Suigen tells them to wait and that he will pay the debt. Suigen runs in to get the device he just got from Riku-Rei where he has 10 billion yen. He tries to withdraw 500 million yen, but the voice assistant in the device tells him that it is not possible to convert in-game currency into real money. The devastated Suigen throws the device away as he says that there is no point if he can only use the wealth in the game. He starts to think that he can't save Riku-Rei again. He looks through the window to see that she's being taken away in the van. Riku-Rei looks at him from the window side of the van and thanks him for trying to save her. She tells him that it made her happy and she'll never forget him no matter where he is, as tears drop from her eyes. Suigen stands by the window devastated and thinks about Riku-Rei's laughing. After a short while, he decides what he will do. The men in the van talk about Suigen being a strange brat and some other things. They suddenly notice him coming from behind on a bicycle. Suigen screams out her name and her badge that he is holding with his mouth falls. The men wonder what he is doing, but Riku-Rei turns down the window to call to see him while the man sitting by her side tries to stop her. Riku-Rei stretches out her hand and continues to call for Suigen. Suigen also tries to reach for her hand as he screams that he will save her no matter what. He tells her to wait for him and replies that she will wait for him as tears fall from their eyes. The man riding the van steps on the brake, which makes Suigen go ahead of the van and struggles to get his balance. Riku-Rei calls his name and the man sitting next to her holds her down and angrily tells her to stay out of it. He falls off the bicycle and tumbles while the van speeds off. Riku-Rei sits quietly holding her knees while the men talk about the possibility of Suigen dying. A golden God-Grave Tech Company badge gets thrown in the air and a glowing man appears in the car sitting in between Riku-Rei and the other man carrying her. The man in the car asks the glowing man who the hell he is, and he replies that he is Silicon Totems. Suigen continues to run in the direction the van went and sees the accident that happened as the van lies sideways. He asks Silicon what he did to Riku-Rei and tells him to let her go. Silicon asks if he's Riku Sugen and tells him that Temujin has a message for him. The message says that he'll be waiting for Suigen in Gravebuster. Silicon tells Suigen that he has delivered the message and immediately vanishes with Riku-Rei. The van behind him explodes and Suigen falls to his knees, wondering how the man disappeared. In the boys' dormitory at night, Suigen tries to turn on the console device in his room. He presses the button repeatedly, but it doesn't work. He wonders what's wrong with the device and if the battery is low. He puts it down on his bed and stares at it. He recalls what Riku-Rei and the recording of Rikuyuki told him. Lying on his bed, he thinks about the Gravebuster that Rikuyuki created. Tears in his eyes, he wonders about the guy who took Riku-Rei away and where he might have taken her. The console device between his legs starts to glow, and a woman in revealing clothes appears on top of him. Suigen panics and asks who she is. She introduces herself as Twin Star and says that he called for her. The panicking Suigen tells her she has the wrong room. She replies that he summoned her and calls him Master. She calls his name as the ID, and he gets teleported into the game. Inside Gravebuster at stage 34, Suigen lands in a desert setting. He notices Twin Star lying unconscious on the ground. Twin Star's body suddenly disintegrates, leaving behind two ball-like creatures that formed her breasts, shocking Suigen. At another location on stage 34, a guy holding a staff comments that the stage is nice and quiet. A girl remarks that the sky seems distant, and another woman mentions that this is a hidden stage no one has robbed yet. The three of them move forward to begin grave robbing. Suigen touches the two ball-like creatures on the ground, wondering if they are the woman's true identity. They get blown away when a giant pyramid monster suddenly emerges from the ground, warning them not to awaken him. Suigen looks at it in shock and asks the panicking Twin Star creatures what the monster is. A giant pyramid monster yells loudly, and the wind pressure from its shout pushes Suigen while the Twin Star guides him. The Twin Stars hide in his jacket, saying they're just guides and they'll leave the rest up to him. Suigen takes out the device he got from Riku-Rei, and the Twin Stars, now inside the device, introduce themselves. Suigen panics and asks what kind of guards would run away at the very beginning. He gets pushed back by the monster's shockwave as it yells that he won't escape. Suigen tells it not to yell since he can hear fine, but the monster replies that he's pretty tough. The pyramid monster decides to test if Suigen is worthy of becoming a tomb guardian. He instructs Suigen to help ward off intruders and protect the stage, but notices Suigen is no longer in front of him. The monster looks around and sees Suigen walking away. He yells that he's not done, but Suigen ignores him, saying he doesn't have time. The monster tells him he won't be able to save Riku-Rei if he doesn't pass the test. Suigen asks how he knows about that. Suddenly, a massive attack brushes by them, leaving Suigen shocked. A woman watching Suigen and the pyramid monster on a hand mirror tells the sniper named EU, who made the shot that they missed. She tells you, who's complaining, that they'll hit with the next one, and he responds positively. EU adjusts his firing angle and loads his next round, saying his charging will be completed in 5 minutes. The woman tells another girl named Farron to create a diversion until EU's weapon finishes charging. Farron flies with her boots toward the monster's direction, raising dust that makes you cough. He asks the woman named Phoebe what she's going to do. She replies she'll do her usual thing and holds out some cards. Suigen asks what just happened, and the pyramid monster replies that Tomb Raiders are attacking. He tells Suigen that he must help defeat them as his test. Suigen stands and tells him to shut up so they can start. The monster laughs and tells him to be prepared. The monster summons a demi-human who introduces herself as Shostia, the incarnate of the desert. Suigen gets flustered as she appears. She asks if he's young Master Suigen, and he confirms. With teary eyes, she tells him she's been waiting for him. Suigen immediately recalls memories of his grandfather, Rikuyuki, putting a muffler on his neck when he was young. Suigen touches his lips, thinking about the memories, and Shostia tells him the seal on his memories has been successfully removed. Suigen thinks about the memories and says that was his gramps. The pyramid monster laughs and mentions Suigen remembering things. Suigen asks who he is, and Shostia calls the monster her master. A section near the top of the pyramid opens, and Rikuyuki floats out on a swim ring. He calls Suigen his grandson and says it's been a while. He expresses happiness to see him with a big smile while Suigen stands shocked. Riku-Rei groans in her sleep. She dreams about Suigen drowning and how she jumps into the water to save him. She wakes up to find a girl in the corner of the prison room offering her clothes to change into. The girl tells Riku-Rei it's time for purification. In the desert area, Phoebe activates her card ability called Centipede Heart. The heart cards she threw into the air transform into giant centipedes, and she quickly orders them to take out the guardians. Suigen stands frozen in confusion. Rikuyuki says he understands Suigen's confusion, and explains that he was once the genius game designer, vice president of Godgrave Tech Company, and Riku-Rei's father. He then reveals he's actually Suigen's grandfather, leaving Suigen shocked. Suddenly, explosions erupt around them as Farron approaches on rocket boots. She fires energy beams from her weapon, causing more explosions. Her weapon shows battery low, which she complains about as she puts it away. Phoebe's giant flying centipedes reach Farron, who immediately recognizes them. She jumps on one and continues heading toward the Guardians. The centipedes start spitting energy balls, causing more explosions around the Guardians. Rikuyuki explains to Suigen that he is the data saved when Suigen logged in right before dying. As Suigen runs from the explosions, the floating Rikuyuki asks Suigen to call him Gramps again. Suigen yells that now isn't the time for that. From a distance, Phoebe and Ryu watch the chaos, talking about getting the treasure and what they'll do with all that wealth. Suigen, Shastia, and Rikuyuki enter the pyramid. Suigen looks around and asks what the room is. Rikuyuki tells him it's the cockpit of a guardian specially made for the hidden level, called the Guardian Giant Yuuki 34. Explosions continue hitting the pyramid. Farron's weapon finishes charging, and she launches an attack that splits the pyramid monster in half. She celebrates her successful hit, but is shocked when a massive robot emerges from the ground, destroying the centipedes. The giant Egyptian-looking robot stands up as its eyes begin to glow. The centipedes continue to spit the energy balls at the giant robot. The robot stumbles a bit, and Farron says he's all for show. The centipedes bombard the giant robot with explosions. It affects Shostia and Suigen, who are in the cockpit. Rikuyuki sits on his floating swim ring, thinking about the Tomb Guardians and Tomb Raiders who have fought over the goddess's tomb for 1,000 years. He thinks about how both sides have the same powers while the twin stars on Suigen's console device scream and ask how they ended up in the mess. EU's weapon charges finish, and he immediately shoots at the giant robot. The attack knocks down the robot on some pyramids and destroys its left leg. Shostia tries to tell Suigen about the probable outcome, but is surprised as she notices him using the computer there. Suigen searches the robot and finds the location of its weapon. He finds it and immediately tells Shostia to take out the long-range cannon first. Shostia replies positively while Rikuyuki watches them. The giant robot takes out the pistol weapon as Rikuyuki continues to think about how the Tomb Raiders destroy tombs to take the power of the gods as their own. He also thinks of how the Tomb Guardians protect the tombs with the powers that lie within them, and the world which he says is their duty as Tomb Guardians. The giant robot points out the pistol which Farron sees and comments that it's huge. The camera connects to the location of the long-range enemy. Suigen tells Shostia not to rush and to aim carefully, which she responds positively to. Rikuyuki's legs show signs of disintegrating as he continues to think about the decline of the number of Tomb Guardians over time. Shostia pulls the trigger, and the giant robot shoots a massive energy attack at the sniping location. EU complains about having to charge again, but Phoebe tells him to calm down. He notices the attack coming towards them on his gun scope and screams. The attack gets redirected and reflected at the giant robot. The attack hits close to them as the shockwave of the attack affects the people in the cockpit of the giant robot. Phoebe compliments the attack from the Guardian's weapon and says that it was as close as the glass card she used to redirect and reflect the attack shatter. He tells her that he's not freaked out and begins to rant about getting back at the Guardians with his ultimate mode. Phoebe says that they'll get back at the Guardians for attacking them. She takes out a club card and it glows. Shostia gets hypnotized and starts to shoot at all the club cards that Phoebe throws into the air. The twin star comes into the cockpit to tell them that the shooting energy is low and that they only have one shot left. They ask the people in the cockpit what they're doing, while Riku Yuki tells them that she is hypnotized. Farron continues to attack the giant robot with her attacks, while the centipedes begin to enter the robot. The twin star reports to them that the armor is being destroyed and that the enemy's familiar has infiltrated their vessel. The explosions continue and it affects the people in the cockpit. Suigen calls to the floor and sees Riku Yuki lying on the floor. Phoebe uses her Ghostbuster console to call Farron. She tells Farron to take cover and that EU is about to let off a huge attack. The centipedes bombard the entrance, which the twin stars try to hold out. The blindfolded Shastia continues to say club while Suigen holds his Gramps in his hands. He asks his Gramps what's wrong and Riku Yuki replies that it's nothing. He continues to say that it's just his saved data starting to disappear and that there is no need to be sad. He tells Suigen to listen well and tells him to protect Bango's tomb. He says that it will also result in saving Rikure. He tells Suigen that he is now the last of the Tomb Guardians as his body disintegrates in Suigen's hands. Suigen begins to cry as he thinks about his unsealed memories of them together. The muffler on his neck starts to glow and he immediately releases a large amount of energy from his body. Farron retreats with the flying centipedes but notices another person flying out of the giant robot on a flying centipede. She calls Phoebe to ask her if there's another player there. Phoebe replies that there isn't another player with them. EU uses his binoculars to check out what is going on and he sees who Farron is talking about. The twin stars both hold the ends of a cloth to prevent Shostia from seeing any club. They notice Suigen's signal and immediately remove the cloth blocking Shostia's view. Farron comments about Suigen's speed and suddenly notices a club sign in front of her. She asks why as the attack from the giant robot comes from behind. It gets redirected towards Phoebe who says no way as she watches it come at her. The attack hits her and she disintegrates into the air. Ryu asks Suigen who he is and asks if he's a guardian. He continues to say that he thought the Tomb Guardians disappeared a long time ago. Suigen replies that there's one in front of him and claims that he is the last Tomb Guardian as he holds some diamond cards in his hand. EU jumps into his mini cannon tank and turns it towards Suigen, who's standing on a cracked glass card of diamond in midair. He shoots his energy beam at Suigen, but it gets reflected at him. After all the fighting ended, Suigen asks if the test is over. Shastia says yes and tells him that he has been acknowledged as the Tomb Guardian because he defeated the Tomb Raiders. She congratulates him and he thanks her. He continues to say that he wouldn't have succeeded without her and the twin stars who are sleeping on his console device. Shostia, who's in tears, shakes her head and tells him that he is already a splendid Tomb Guardian. She thanks him for everything and apologizes that she has to leave. Everything around disappears and Suigen looks around the void they're in. She tells him that the stage and her role have come to an end. She hugs him and tells him goodbye. She disintegrates into the air and wishes him luck in battle. Suigen thinks about Shostia and suddenly hears a woman laughing out loud behind him. He sees a woman who talks down on him and makes fun of him. She laughs and tells him that he isn't the last guardian but her. She takes up her gun and shoots at Suigen, who gets hit. Suigen falls into the void where they are while the woman continues her laugh as she watches him go down. On stage 35, Golden Mind's Phoebe's team arrives on stage 35 with a new man accompanying them. The man tells them to listen up and starts talking about his dream. He stands close to Phoebe and says his dream is for all the world's wealth to belong to gold hunters one day. Phoebe punches him away and tells him to stop trying to sound cool while grabbing her butt. Farron and EU sigh and look away while the man, lying on the ground, makes squeezing gestures with his hand while thinking about his big dream. He immediately wakes up on his bed in real life as the console device falls to the ground. He quickly checks his chest where he was shot and notices the injury disappearing. The device on the ground starts ringing. He picks up the device and answers the call. The caller asks if he's Riku Suigen, which he confirms, and he asks who's calling. The man tells him he's Temujin of Totems. Temujin tells Suigen he'll be waiting for him in Gravebuster before hanging up. Suigen tries to continue the conversation and tells him to wait, but it's too late. Suigen receives a file on the phone and opens it to see an image of the unconscious Riku Rei lying on a bed in her school uniform. In the busy city, everyone looks at their phones. Two boys discuss divine coins and how they can turn 200,000 into 100 or even 200 times more. A young girl passing by hears their conversation. She approaches them from behind and tells the fat boy that she might be interested in him. The fat boy asks if she wants to join him. In the game, the new man and EU check out their prey from a high vantage point. EU tells him that the prey doesn't seem to be coming out. Phoebe sits under an umbrella looking into her hand mirror. She complains about having to deal with all the small fry and tells the man she joined because he talked big. She asks what's going on and the man tells her to calm down, saying they're about to catch a huge quarry. Phoebe replies that she hopes so while Farron asks the man how long they're going to keep doing what they're doing. He tells her it's just for now. He begins a cool speech saying that money is power in the world. He talks about getting lots of money and making people of the precious world acknowledge them. The flustered Phoebe and the others look at him as he makes his speech. An alarm starts to ring and the man quickly runs to the checkpoint. He uses his scope to check out the prey. He sees Fatty and his friend with the girl who joined them. He immediately tells the others to prepare. He looks back surprised to see the three of them ready with their weapons. In the library at Shinru Academy, Suigen reads a book about Gravebuster and how new players first have to complete beginner registration. Suigen reads about the registration process, but gets interrupted by Rancho, who tells him that something's meaning becomes clear if you read it 100 times. Rancho asks Suigen if he's reading about Gravebuster, which Suigen confirms with a nod. Rancho tells him he's in luck while Suigen wonders why. Rancho introduces the fat girl behind him to Suigen and tells him she's a game freak who participated in the closed beta. In Gravebuster, the fatty defeats a monster. He brags that spending 200,000 was worth it. The girl compliments him while his friend responds that money equals power. Phoebe approaches from behind and tells the fatty he's strong. She asks for a favor while using her body to entice them. The two guys eagerly ask what she wants while their female companion questions if Phoebe and Farron seem suspicious. Phoebe gives the girl a cold stare, making her immediately stop talking. Phoebe starts acting cute, explaining that she and Farron discovered amazing treasure, but dangerous monsters guard it. Phoebe tells Farron to also request their help. The nervous Farron says please and looks away, which motivates the guys even more as they comment about her. At Shinryu Academy, Suigen sits by the pool using his computer. He reads information about Gravebuster's current ruler named Dark Tiger and his organization called Precious. He continues reading about Precious's wealth and how they use it to control the game world. That night in his room, he reads about recent forces opposing them. He remembers what the fat girl told him about Temujin of Totems. She explained that Totem is a new group fighting against Precious. She says Temujin is the leader and a villain willing to do anything. She also mentions Temujin is known as the terrifying man who devours everything. Suigen thinks about what the fat girl said about devouring everything. He immediately grabs his console device to look at Riku Rei's picture that was sent to him. He considers the possibility that Temujin might have devoured her. He rolls around on his bed, screaming her name. Riku Rei sits on a bed, examining the room she's in. Someone announces they're entering. The man walks in and asks if she's comfortable, telling her to make herself at home and asking if she needs anything. She tells him to let her go. The man apologizes and says that's impossible. He approaches her while a little girl watches from the doorway. The man holds Riku Rei's face, telling her she'll soon never want to leave. Riku Rei struggles to free herself from his grip, and he comments that she's feisty, but that's fine because it wouldn't be fun otherwise. He laughs and walks away, and she sees his name, Temujin, written on the back of his robe. At stage 35, Phoebe and Farron lead the guys to their destination. Phoebe announces they've arrived. The boys look around but don't see any monsters. Phoebe continues her act, saying they were slimed and got all sticky in the abandoned mine, which excites the boys. Farron adds that it cost them 3 million, which motivates the girl with the guys. The three rush toward the mine. Phoebe signals to EU standing on top of the mine area. EU strikes his staff on the ground, trapping the three in his cage. The boys beg Phoebe and Farron to save them, but the trapped girl hits them and says they've been tricked. The boys plead to be released while the girl threatens to report them. The man who joined Phoebe's team makes an embarrassing introduction, saying people call him Golden Ryozabaru and Wild Wolf. Riku Rei's roommate shows her desk to Suigen. She tells him that no one knows where she is and says that she hopes Riku Rei comes back soon. Suigen looks at the small drawing of Gwyn that is attached to a corner of her monitor. Suigen tells the roommate that it's okay and that she doesn't have to worry. He says that Riku Rei will come back no matter what. He thinks to himself that he'll bring her back no matter what. In Gravebuster, Wild Wolf and the rest of his team raise their cups to cheer at the lobby stage. They drink and celebrate their success of racking up millions. EU praises Wild Wolf for its success. Wild Wolf says that it's best to attack newbies who are stacked on cash. Phoebe tells him not to say such things in public, but he asks her why. She sighs because of his stupidity. Farron calls their attention to another player who is sitting at a table alone and acting weird. EU stands and tells the others that he wants to go ask the player what's wrong. At Temujin's palace, a girl named Retret brings a red console device to Temujin. He asks her if it's completed and she replies that it is. He tells her well done. She excuses herself and immediately disappears from the room. Temujin says that the device will let Precious know that they can be unpredictable. Koshiriko, the little girl assigned to Riku Rei, asks if the leader made the device for Riku Rei. The masked guy tries to stop Koshiriko, but she continues to say that Riku Yuuki is dead, which makes his daughter useless. She asks why, and Temujin replies that she wouldn't understand a girl's worth or what it means. At the lobby stage, EU tells the others about the information he got. They were surprised to hear that his team was wiped out. They discuss the team and how it was related to Precious. Wild Wolf asks if the weird guy is the leader, and EU affirms it. EU continues to say that the weird guy said some insanely strong woman appeared out of nowhere and stripped them of all their belongings. Phoebe and Wild Wolf react about it it, and Wild Wolf gives their view on what probably happened. He goes on to say that the leader must be someone as awesome as him. The next day, Wild Wolf raises his sword and declares that it's another day filled with mugging. He points his sword to the new set of people caught in the cage trap and asks them to leave their belongings. The captured people beg that he spare their lives and that they will pay him. Wild Wolf tells them that money is life in Gravebuster. He tells them that they'll be forcibly logged out and their account killed if they run out of money. EU compliments the line he just used and writes it down. Phoebe and Farron, who are also watching, say it is lame. Wild Wolf stabs one of the caged players with his sword, and his financial power comes up above 50 million, while the player he stabs searches for his armor and money. He gets logged out while Wild Wolf licks his sword and asks who's next. The gesture makes the remaining 2 players in the trap cage start to shiver. Someone shoots at the top of the trap cage and it immediately begins to disappear. Wild Wolf and his team look up to see the lady who shot Swegan when he was in the void. Wild Wolf asks who she is. The lady replies that he has something pretty interesting despite his lack of skills. Wild Wolf looks more carefully and notices it's a woman. The other team members attack her, but she dodges all their attacks and lands in front of Wild Wolf. She points her gun at Wild Wolf, but realizes she's surrounded by his team. Phoebe tells her that's as far as she goes, and says that Wild Wolf is their leader despite how he looks. Wild Wolf compliments them and tells the woman to drop her gun. She smiles and lets her gun fall. When the gun touches the ground, a large trap encircles everyone surrounding her. She jumps out of the circle while the others get trapped in the woman's cage, points her gun at Wild Wolf, and demands he hand over the goods. Wild Wolf falls on his butt with tears in his eyes. He begs her to wait and says they'll hand over their Buster items as she walks toward him. He starts listing all their super rare items and says she can have them, while his team members sigh from inside the trap cage. He tricks her into looking at the others and stabs her from behind with his sword. He laughs and says he's just kidding while calling her an idiot. His disappointed teammates express what they think about what he just did. The woman starts talking about Wild Wolf's sword that drains the opponent's financial power. She confirms the sword also takes from whoever has the least money. Wild Wolf affirms this and says he has 50 million despite how he looks. Both their financial power gauges appear. Wild Wolf and his team are shocked as they watch her gauge continue to rise above his own. Phoebe and Farron ask if she's one of the 5 players who have over 100 million in the game. Wild Wolf falls to his knees as his sword disappears, and he calls her one of the billion players. She looks down at him and says she wouldn't mind giving it to him. A massive gold bar falls from the sky, making Wild Wolf and his teammates panic. The woman disappears, and the giant gold bar lands on them. At the boys' dormitory, Swegan holds his console device and prepares to log in. Twin Star appears behind him and asks if he's ready. Swegan nods and says he knows where he needs to go. He immediately gets teleported into the game. At stage 35, the trap cage disappears and EU rushes out to find Wild Wolf. Phoebe notices the woman in a carriage and asks for her name. The woman replies that her name is Collector and that she's a woman who lives solely to kill Tomb Raiders. She rides off laughing loudly while Phoebe thinks about Collector. EU calls to Wild Wolf, who has been stripped of all his belongings, telling him to wake up. Wild Wolf says that money is over as he gets logged out of the game. At the Precious base, the leader asks who dares to defy Precious. A member reports that the person's name is Collector. They collectively declare that anyone who defies them shall die. 1 year ago, somewhere rain falls continually in the ghetto area. A girl comments about the continuous rain. She asks the young boy named Takashi who's sitting next to her what he has been thinking about. The boy tells her that he is going to make money from the game in his hand and leave the town someday. She smiles and asks him where he wants to go. Takeshi says that he wants to go to a place like heaven and not where they are. The girl named Mikan says that she wants to go too, and the boy replies that he wouldn't mind taking her with him. She thanks him and smiles. Koshiriko brings Riku Rei into a room. Temujin presents the red console to Riku Rei and welcomes her as a member of Totem. She picks up the console while Temujin smirks as she looks at it. At stage 10, Twin Battlegate Takeshi asks why he isn't allowed to join the martial art tournament. The personnel tells him he needs to pay the entry fee as he hands Takeshi a flyer. Takeshi sees the flyers that say 50,000 yen for the entry fee. The personnel ask him what he wants to do. Takeshi says damn it and walks away from him. Takeshi tries to climb the arena and tries to enter from the outside. The flyer in his hand flies away and he looks down to realize that he is far away from the ground. Swegan asks him if he knows where along the matchmaker is. Takeshi looks back to see Swegan being held by Twin Star who's flying with wings. Some people in the arena complain about the wait and demand that they start the tournament. Swegan introduces himself to Takeshi and asks for his name. Takeshi tells Swegan his name, while Twin Star, who's holding both of them in the air, says that she's worn out. She asks why they have to watch from the sky, to which Sugan replies that he is not there to watch the tournament. He continues to say that he doesn't want to pay the expensive entry fee just to see the matchmaker. Twin Star asks if he wants to hide that he is a billion player, which Suijin replies that he is frugal. He asks Takeshi if he's there to watch the tournament. Takeshi replies that he wants to join the tournament and talks about checking out the atmosphere of the event. Twin Star notifies Suigan about the location of Laolong, who's in charge of the beginner's courses. She tells them to go, but Suigan tells her to wait a moment. Laolong begins to talk to the people and thanks them for waiting. He begins to introduce the finalists to the viewers who cheer for the characters appearing on the stage. Mammoth Viking, the best fighter of the stormy seas, appears first, followed by by EU, who Lalong says is the #1 ice user. Phoebe and Farron, who are watching, comment about the boasting of the two finalists. Lalong talks about the 10 million yen real money prize that will be awarded to the winner and the supplementary prize, which is an ice snow leopard. Suigan comments about the prize while the character anchoring the tournament, along with Lalong, declares that it is the final battle, and he tells the warriors to commence the fight. The Mammoth Viking releases an attack from his lance as Yu also hits his staff on the ground to release an ice attack. Mammoth Viking destroys the attack effects with his weapon. EU comments about his brute strength and continues to unleash his frost attacks. The other commentator, Lao Long, says that EU has been cornered, but he is interrupted by Lao Long, who tells him to take a closer look at how calm EU looks. EU calmly continues to release the same frost attack as he retreats backward on every attack. Mammoth Viking, who continues to destroy EU's attacks, tells that he has no idea that he is bringing himself to his doom. EU laughs and begins his delusional thoughts of how he will defeat Mammoth Viking with the ice scattered on the stage. Suigan says that he thinks there's a bit more going on. Twin Star wonders about what he said and asks Takeshi who he thinks is going to win. Takeshi says that none of them is going to win. He raises his book and screams that the one who's going to win the 10 million yen prize is him. Takeshi's book shines very brightly and it makes Twin Star, who's holding both of them in the air, let go. EU announces that he's going to end the battle, but gets knocked down when Suijin falls on him. EU gets locked out as Phoebe and Farron express their surprise and disappointment together. Twin flies near Suigan and apologizes, saying it suddenly became bright. Takeshi, wearing his battle robe, confronts Mammoth Viking and tells him he'll have to fight him instead. Mammoth Viking asks what he's talking about, and the other commentator confirms it's true. He explains that according to the rulebook, if an intruder defeats a participant, they earn the right to participate in the battle. Takeshi smiles as Lao Long announces that the intruder's IDs, Takeshi and Riku Suigan, are now designated as the challenging team in the final match. Suijin, sitting on the ground, complains about the rule while Takeshi apologizes for getting him involved. Takeshi explains that he desperately needs the 10 million yen prize money. Takeshi begins to recall memories of him and Mikan, who had been together since childhood. He thinks about how they both got the gaming console and started playing together. In his memory, Takeshi runs from a giant monster that Mikan defeats. She asks why he keeps running away, and tells him he won't get stronger that way. Takeshi argues that's not true, explaining how his paladin's memoirs help him grow stronger little by little without fighting. He demonstrates by taking Mikan's picture with the book, which produces a photo. Mikan is surprised as Takeshi explains that he gets stronger gradually by putting a photograph in the book daily. Mikan asks if that's why he's been secretly taking photos of her. He gets embarrassed as she moves closer, saying she knows what he's doing. The flustered Takeshi apologizes, explaining it's because they're always together. Mikan asks to see the book, which he reluctantly hands over. She looks at her pictures and he asks if she's mad. Mikan replies she isn't because the pictures are their precious memories. She tells Takeshi he's her precious partner, as they happily take a picture together. Takeshi also remembers Mikan now in the hospital. He holds her hand, promising she'll get better. He tells her he'll earn money to move her to a better hospital, and starts crying. She calls him a dummy and ruffles his hair, saying she'll be fine and that he needs to leave their town. Back at the arena, Takeshi holds his book and vows to save Mikan. He declares he'll win no matter what as Suigan watches. Mammoth Viking laughs, saying they won't beat him. When Takeshi asks why, the commentator explains that intruders must take a penalty. Takeshi wonders what penalty, and the commentator states that intruders have their abilities halved, regardless of circumstances. Mammoth Viking laughs and tells Takeshi his puny strength won't be a match. Takeshi's book glows as his power gets halved. Suigan asks if he didn't know about this rule while Twin Star complains about his recklessness. Takeshi remains confident, saying he still won't lose. He runs toward Mammoth Viking as his book transforms into a hammer and launches explosives at his opponent. The commentator explains to the crowd how Takeshi's item converts photographs into fighting power. After Takeshi gets knocked down, Lalong continues explaining that the memories in the photographs disappear with each attack. Suigan looks at some used pictures on the ground and disappears. Takeshi picks up his hammer and says he doesn't care if all his memories vanish. He declares he'll continue if that's what it takes to save Mikan. Takeshi runs towards Viking to strike with his hammer. He screams that it's for his Mikan as he raises the hammer to attack. Suigan holds his robe from behind, which kills his attack. Takeshi falls to the ground, and the hammer he was holding falls on his head. The hammer rolls to the ground and transforms back into Takeshi's book of memories. Leolong continues the commentary saying that intruders have inexplicably begun attacking each other. Takeshi holds his head in pain, and Suigan walks towards Takeshi's book. The other commentator asks if it's a type of strategy, but Leolong replies that he doesn't have any idea. Leolong looks at Twin Star, who's cheering for Viking, and says that he thinks he has seen the girl somewhere before. Mammoth Viking begins to show off, and he says that it's fun as Twin Star continues to cheer him on. Twin Star thinks to herself that Viking is an idiot and that she's counting on Suigan. Takeshi, who's lying on the ground and holding his head in pain, raises his head to ask Suigan what he's doing. He sees Suigan, who opens the picture book in front of him and realizes that the pictures have disappeared. Suigan asks Takeshi if he thinks Mikan will be happy about it. Suigen says that the memories they both made together are going to disappear not just from Takeshi's heart, but also from Mikan's. Takeshi, who's remembering some of his memories with Mikan, begins to cry and says that there's no other way to cure Mikan's illness. Takeshi tells Suigen that he doesn't want the memories to disappear, while Viking on the other end waves to the fans as Twin Star continues to cheer him on. Suigen gives Kakashi his book with a smile and tells him that it'll be fine. He says that he'll switch with him. The commentators talk about the intruder team's little meeting and the switch they made. They bring up Suigen's ID information only to find out that hasn't even finished the beginner's course. The commentators say Suigen is 100% an amateur, while Phoebe and Farin look at him suspiciously as Suigen waves at the viewers. Mammoth Viking says that they are mocking him by making him fight an amateur after making him wait for so long. He immediately begins to attack Suigen, who only dodges. Viking throws blows and words at Suigen, who struggles to avoid being hit. The commentators begin to talk about the battle while Twin Star complains that Suigen is hopeless. Viking tells him to stop moving around as he releases a frost attack at him. Suigen's lower body gets frozen on a spot and Viking walks closer to finish him off. Viking tries to finish off Suigen, but his attack gets blocked by Twin Star. Takeshi watches everything that is happening while the commentators continue to narrate what is happening to the crowd. They bring up the Twin Star's information and realize that there's no registration data on her. The immobilized Suigen thanks the Twin Star for her help and she turns to him to say that he owes her big time for it. Viking comments about Twin Star and says that he chooses her. He asks her name and Twin Star begins to boast about her beautiful yet terrifying true form. The Twin Star releases some energy and transforms into the two-ball-like creature form. Suigen, who looks disappointed, says beautiful yet terrifying, which makes the Twin Stars embarrassed as they claim they made a mistake. Vikings say they're cute. He grabs them and says they are soft like marshmallows. The Twin Star complains that he's gross, while Suigen, who's watching the scene, says that he's a freak. Takeshi suddenly runs towards Viking and takes the Twin Star ball-like creatures out of Viking's hands. Viking asks him why he did it, and Takeshi replies that guys are supposed to protect girls. He continues to say that he hasn't given up on fighting with teary eyes. Takeshi begins to remember memories of him and Mikan together. In Takeshi's memory, Takeshi is hiding behind a rock. Mikan comes to tell him that she managed to take care of the enemies. She asks him if he's hurt, but Takeshi doesn't respond. She continues to ask what's wrong. Mikan says that she's there with him, so there's nothing to be afraid of. Back to the present, Viking, who's behind Takeshi, calls him a brat. Viking begins to shoot some frost balls at Takeshi's back. Takeshi holds the Twin Star ball creatures tightly and says that he wants to protect Mikan forever. He says that he's not going to run away anymore, or will he hide again? Takeshi declares that it's his turn to protect Mikan, which Suigen sees and relates to. The commentator calls Viking a small man despite his size, because of the way he's beating the little boy. Twin Star thanks Takeshi, as it transforms back to her human form in Takeshi's hands, and thanks him for protecting her. Leolong exclaims and begins to make a commentary about them not having records of a user that can change their physical appearance freely. He calls her a humanoid grave beast, and the other commentator screams out that it's bad. He begins to talk about the high-level familiar that has appeared. The commentator also asks who in the world is the young man who's an amateur, yet controls such a familiar. Suigen, who's the center of attraction, laughs off the question while still frozen to a spot. Phoebe and Farin continue to look at him closer and suspiciously. Viking points his weapon at Twin Star, who's flying, and asks if she's trying to mess with him. He tells her that she's not going to fool him with her bluff. Twin Star smiles as she releases her energy. Bright light covers the whole arena, and she transforms into a giant two-headed dragon, which is an S-class grave beast. The commentators scream and begin to make commentary about the appearance of the twin-headed jade dragon as they shiver in panic. Leolong asks why Suigen has such a thing, while Takeshi, who's on the battle stage, frets. Viking stammers and asks what she is. The twin-headed dragon releases massive attacks from both of its heads at Viking. Viking freezes into a brick of jade and immediately shatters to pieces. Leolong pushes the head of the other commentator from his microphone and declares that the winner is the intruder team. Later in the evening, Takeshi, who's holding the prize money, and baby Snow Leopard, thanked Suigen. Suigen replies and tells Takeshi to send his regards to Mikan. Takeshi thanks the dragon lady and bids her farewell before logging out of the game. Suigen receives an alert on his console. He takes it out to check and sees Twin Star, who's naked in her human form. She asks if he's sure that he's okay with giving the prize money and Snow Leopard to Takeshi. Suigen replies that he's a billion player and that he doesn't care about 10 million. He asks her about her clothing issue, and she replies that she can't do anything about it until her energy charges back up. She complains about the real money he gave away and says whatever as the console goes off. Suigen calls to his knees depressed as he realizes that the prize money is real money and not game money. An object hits the floor and a portal opens. The commentators both wave at Suigen, who's about to enter the portal. The sad Suigen waves back at them with tears in his eyes before entering the portal. The commentators wonder about who Suigen is. The other commentator asks if he's a collector. Leolong shushes him off the topic and reminds him of the witch who conquered the stage all on her own. Leolong then says that he hopes nothing bad happens.